The crown of Israel felt like a distant, fading memory to the man hiding in the dust of Adullam. Only years earlier, the prophet Samuel had poured sacred oil over David's head, declaring him the future king. But as David sat in the damp darkness of a limestone cave, the only thing he felt was the sting of betrayal. He was a man without a country. He had been stripped of his rank, his home, and his safety. Imagine the psychological toll of this transition. One day you are the nation's greatest hero, and the next, you are a hunted animal. David lived in a world of shadows, where every rustle of the wind sounded like an assassin's footstep. But something miraculous began to happen in that isolation. The cave, which should have been a tomb for David's dreams, became a womb for a new kind of kingdom. Slowly, the silence of the wilderness was broken by the sound of footsteps. But these were not Saul's soldiers. First came David's brothers and his father's entire household, fleeing the king's paranoid rage. Then, the desert began to cough up the broken pieces of Israelite society. The Bible says that every man who was in distress, every man who was in debt, and every man who was bitter in soul sought him out. Nearly 400 men gathered in that cave. They were the outcasts, the rejects, and the bankrupt. They were a messy, frustrated crowd. But David didn't turn them away. He looked at these broken men and saw a future army. In the flickering firelight of Adullam, David began to lead. He taught them that their distress could be turned into discipline. He taught them that their debt to the world could be repaid through devotion to God. In the silence of that cave, David wrote some of his most profound psalms. When he wrote, "God is my refuge and strength," he wasn't sitting in a comfortable study. He was sitting on a cold rock, sharing his bread with 400 desperate men. This was the birth of the kingdom, not in a palace of gold, but in a sanctuary of shadows. The scene shifts to the jagged cliffs of En Gedi, the spring of the young goat. It is one of the most beautiful places in Israel, where waterfalls crash down into deep pools in the middle of a brutal desert. But the beauty was about to be stained by the threat of war. King Saul had received intelligence. He knew David was hiding among the rocks. Saul's obsession had reached a fever pitch. He had abandoned the defense of the kingdom to pursue a personal vendetta. He took 3,000 of his most elite, hand-picked warriors. These were the special forces of ancient Israel. As they marched, the sound of their iron armor clashing against their shields echoed through the canyons like the beating heart of a monster. The heat was oppressive, reflecting off the limestone cliffs until the air shimmered. Saul, feeling the weight of his age and the exhaustion of the climb, sought a moment of relief. He saw a massive cave near the sheepfolds, a cavern so deep that the light of the sun couldn't reach the back of it. He left his guards at the entrance and stepped inside to attend to his needs and rest. The transition from the blinding white sunlight to the pitch-black cave was sudden. Saul's eyes couldn't adjust. He felt the cool air on his face and relaxed, believing he was alone. But deep in the recesses of that cave, 400 pairs of eyes were watching him. David and his men were pressed against the jagged walls, their breath held tight in their chests. The king was so close that David could hear the rustle of his silk robes. His men gripped their swords, their knuckles white. They whispered in the dark, "This is the moment. This is the day the Lord spoke of. Strike him now, and we can all go home. Kill the hunter, and the hunted becomes the king." This moment in the cave of En Gedi is perhaps the greatest test of David's entire life. It was a test of timing, a test of theology, and a test of the heart. To David's men, the situation was clear. God had delivered Saul into their hands. It was a gift. It was justice. Saul had tried to murder David multiple times. He had slaughtered the priests of Nob. He was a tyrant who had lost his way. David began to crawl forward. Every pebble that shifted under his weight sounded like a thunderclap in the silence. He was inches away from the man who had made his life a nightmare. He raised his dagger. He could have ended the civil war in a single second. He could have claimed the throne and saved his men years of wandering. But as David looked at the sleeping king, he didn't see an enemy. He saw a man who had once been chosen by God. He remembered the oil on Saul's head. David's heart struck him with a sudden, sharp conviction. He realized that if he took the throne by murder, his own throne would be vulnerable to murder. He chose a different path. He reached out and, with the precision of a master craftsman, sliced off a small corner of Saul's royal robe. When David returned to his men in the shadows, they were livid. They felt betrayed. They wanted blood, not a piece of fabric. But David silenced them with a voice of iron. "The Lord forbid that I should lay a hand on my master, for he is the Lord's anointed." David was teaching them a lesson that would define his reign. You do not have to grab what God has already promised. If God puts you on the throne, God will sustain you. If you put yourself on the throne through violence, you will have to sustain it through violence. David chose to be a king of integrity, even if it meant remaining a fugitive for another day. Saul finished his business, stood up, and walked out of the cave, completely unaware that he had been seconds away from death. Saul was walking back toward his troops when a voice shattered the desert silence. "My lord the king." Saul spun around, shielding his eyes from the sun. There, standing at the mouth of the cave, was David. To the shock of the 3,000 soldiers, David didn't throw a spear. He bowed his face to the ground in a sign of total, radical respect. David stood up and held the piece of the robe high in the air so everyone could see it. "Why do you listen to those who say I want to harm you?" David's voice was clear and filled with the authority of the truth. "This day you saw with your own eyes how the Lord delivered you into my hands. Some urged me to kill you, but I spared you. See, my father, the piece of your robe in my hand. I cut it off, but I did not kill you." The evidence was undeniable. David had proven that his heart was clean. He challenged the king. "May the Lord judge between you and me, but my hand will not touch you." Saul was a man of high emotion and deep instability. The sight of that cloth and the sound of David's mercy broke him. He began to weep, his cries echoing off the canyon walls. "Is that your voice, David, my son?" he asked. In that moment, the madness lifted. Saul looked at David and saw the future. He confessed, "You are more righteous than I. You have treated me well, but I have treated you badly." Saul realized that David's mercy was the ultimate proof of his calling to be king. They made a peace treaty that day, and Saul returned to his palace. The story of the cave is a message for us today. We all have caves moments where we have the power to strike back at someone who hurt us. We all have moments where a shortcut to our dreams seems so easy. But David's life tells us that the wilderness is where your character is built. God is watching how you handle your enemies. He is watching to see if you will wait for his timing. Don't be afraid of the wilderness, and don't be afraid of the cave. Those are the places where God turns shepherds into kings. Thank you for watching this 8 minutes epic. If you found strength in David's integrity, subscribe and join us for the next chapter of the Great King.